think you just have to expect and normalize that you're going to want to sabotage yourself. The smaller self, the shadow, the predator, whatever you want to call it, is like, stay small, you little bitch. And you're like, hell no.
Welcome back to another episode of the Live Free Lifestyle podcast. I am your host, Leah Brathwaite, and today I'm excited to welcome my friend Mark Groves to the show, a name that probably many of you will recognize as a leading voice in the world of human connection and conscious relationships. Mark is a husband, a father, a human connection specialist, author, speaker, creator of Create the Love, and host of the Mark Groves podcast, where he's helped millions of people worldwide understand the deeper patterns behind how we show up in love and life. So I would love to welcome Mark to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
Excited to be here.
I'm so excited to be here. And before we dive into the first question I ask of everybody, I just wanted to say the thing that drew me to your work years ago, and I don't remember if you remember how we met, but you had given a talk at Wanderlust in Mont Tremblant and had mentioned the book Attached. And I went and bought that book and read it and was like, oh my God, I need some help with all of this, because I discovered things about myself. It totally did. And I think that's what I wrote on my application to work with you. I was like, help, because I have figured out some shit that I need some help with. And the thing that I loved most is that you guided me through not just some of my most challenging relationship issues, but it was your ability to cut through the noise and really get to the root of those patterns. So I know that this is something that you live and breathe by. So to preface all of that with saying, what does it mean to you to live free?
Such a good question. And I think, to me, liberation has many layers in that we are most exposed to our limitations relationally, I'd say for the most part. And so we see the triggers that we have. We see the repeated relationship patterns from a place of like, what's wrong with me that I do these things, where it's actually what's right with you that you do those things, because they're all adaptive strategies or learned behaviors. Mm-hmm. But if they're not serving you, then ultimately you're not free. And I think about that in the context of everything, that liberation, we really sort of play whack-a-mole with it in that, I might start to liberate myself from an expression perspective in romantic relationships. I might start to have boundaries. I might start to stand for myself. I might leave a unhealthy relationship. I might leave a pattern. But then what'll inevitably happen is you'll start to see where you had a similar behavior pattern in your relationship to food, in your relationship to health, in your relationship to your phone. I think is probably the greatest magnifier now, and it's pretty recent. But I would say that a smartphone and apps probably offer even more of a window into where you're not free now, at least in my experience. So to be free to me is to be in choice with everything you're in a relationship with, that none of the relationships you have, whether that's sugar, that's alcohol, that's foods, that's your phone, that's people, that all of them are because you want them in your life and that you could leave them if you needed to. And that can sound unromantic, but what I mean by that is that if you are not sovereign and free to leave a relationship, then you're not free to choose it. And when people get that, they get it.
Yeah, and that is so, so powerful. So if you were to distill all of that down, it sounds like liberation comes from the relationship that you have with everything. But first and foremost, you have to be able to be in relationship with yourself, to be able to make those decisions from a place of power instead of a place of feeling disempowered or feeling like you need those external things to validate your experience or your existence.
Yeah, and right? Are you willing when you sit within your own being, which a lot of people don't have this yet, but when you sit within your own being and you understand what you truly value at the essence of your bones, when it comes to honoring that value and protecting the safety and security of your own being, are you willing to stand in that at the cost of relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's why I say you can put it into anything, because you could say, well, if it's sugar, it's like, well, if your being wants to feel healthy and fulfilled and not having any addictions, can you say no and feel the urge and the draw, but actually be with the longing? Because most of us just don't have the capacity to be with the longing. And I think that's actually being eroded even more with short form content.
Yeah. The quick hits, the like instant satisfaction, the gratification, so you don't have to feel what's underneath the feeling. And I think our feelings are the thing that drive everything, our avoidance and our desire. Like we want to feel a certain way or we don't want to feel a certain way. So we'll make choices whether or not they're good for us so that we don't have to feel some of those existential type feelings like being alone or that feeling of sovereignty, which comes from recognizing ultimately that you are in some way alone, but that you are also able to choose in your highest potential when you understand values and when you understand like the power that you actually have in your own sovereignty, like as your own self. So my question for you about this is, you distinguish a lot in your work the difference between like love and wounded attachment. And we can relate that to like true relationship and kind of just this superficial covering over of the things that we don't want to feel. So can you speak a little bit more about the difference between those two things? Like, how do you know it's like actually love and actually a good thing to be in relationship with versus something that's just a wounded attachment to avoid feeling an insecure type feeling?
Well, I'd say from a growth and evolution perspective, it's all love, in that even if you are relating from a place of wounding, which most people are till they aren't, because it's so unconscious. Like we're like, why am I drawn to people who don't treat me well? Why do I tolerate BS from other people, but also from myself? So as we really wake up to our relationship patterns, then at some point we have to decide, I just don't want to do that stuff anymore. And then we could start to see that generally the thing we long for, that we longed for as a kid, is generally the thing we long for in the relationships we choose. So we unconsciously choose familiar circumstances that feel the same, even if that feeling wasn't good. And this is really an unconscious desire to resolve it. And so when we start to give that thing to ourselves, which when I ask people like, what's the thing you wanted most as a child you didn't get? The majority of the time, the answer is something like to be understood, to feel safe, to feel important, to feel loved. And at the core of all of those, there is really if you didn't feel safe, if you didn't feel prioritized, if you didn't feel understood, there's usually an internalized belief that I wasn't enough to get that. Like I wasn't worthy of that thing. So when we start to look at what we've been seeking in relationship, we can start to give it to ourselves. And of course, it's being stuck in a developmental stage where you're seeking that from an adult, from a parent, from a caregiver. And if you don't get it, you long for it. And so we seek it in relationship instead of saying, if I give that to me, like if I'm afraid that you're going to leave me, yet you work shift work and you're emotionally unavailable, etc.
Yeah.
What happens if I was really present with myself, with my own needs? But if I abandon those in relationship to you, I'm still experiencing the lack of understanding, the lack of prioritization, the lack of importance, the lack of presence. And so I'm actually living in my wound in the way I'm relating. And I get to blame the other person. And those are viable blaming. Like, oh, they aren't available. And they do have an inability to co-regulate. And they're not present. And they do work shift work. Great. All real. And you could spend your life finding evidence for all of that. Or you could realize that even in your own experience of yourself, you're just living that every day.
And creating it. Yeah. There's a portion of what I teach as well to like learning how to validate your own feelings gives you the freedom to be able to not have to rely on other people for that sense of unconscious validation. I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert that I heard her say something really interesting. She kind of encapsulates like the longing that you're speaking to in like the idiom lava. You're either looking for love affection or attention, validation or appreciation. Some form of those four things is what drives our behavior and drives our need for relating. And if we have a history of not having those things met, and we only know that as the pattern that we live by, then we keep kind of recreating it and proving ourselves right of like, see, I'm not worthy, or see, love is hard, or see, like, I can't get my needs met. And we continue to perpetuate that. So many of us are like recreating those patterns. And I know until we worked together, I was creating a lot of that based on like my relational blueprint that I learned from my family. But what would you say is like the key part, or to truly start to interrupt those patterns rather than just becoming aware of it? Because some of us know like, oh yeah, I attract unavailable men, and we kind of like wear it as a badge, or like, oh, I can't read red flags. But there's a difference between awareness and actually changing that pattern. So what would you say is the thing that would make that or close that gap?
Well, it's like I said at the beginning, that liberation is choice. So to be in choice. So if you look at, there's that thought that trauma is the opposite of choice, that it's like we lost choice through an experience. And that could be that you within your own family decided unconsciously that you couldn't express certain feelings or doubt. Like, I know you grew up in a religious household. So if you were to question the faith or the religion, that probably was no bueno. So you learn not to be curious. You learn that certain subjects, you're just supposed to accept them how they are. And then you look at patterns relationally, how you feel in relationships. And it's really about being able to, because you could have someone have awareness about their pattern. And as you said, they'll just keep repeating it. They become addicted to personal growth, but they don't become addicted to personal change. And that's a very different world. You can know a lot, not live a lot.
Yes.
So I really see it as you have to make a commitment to your own integrity, that you are going to live the things you know. That's the problem, is most of us don't. The way I hold myself accountable to it personally is I have two things. One, that if I'm going to teach it, I got to live it. So it has to be embodied. So I can't tell you to do something I don't do. Doesn't mean I'm not going to be in the humanness of the negotiations with myself and my soul and, my shadow. It just means that I'm going to be relatively open about that, but also I'm not going to ask you to do something I haven't actually done. The second part is that, holds me really accountable, because there's a level of integrity to the work that I want to hold. And so it's embodied. So if I work with you, or you're even listening to this or watching this and you're like, oh, how do I like shift to that space? You have to decide that you want to be embodied, that you want the energy. Some people might call it a vibration, but it's just a swagger, that like you actually live the thing you do. And so it's not bullshit. It's not fake. It doesn't have that inauthentic vibe. The second part is that there's a desire, that there's a commitment to myself that I will always live at my highest level of knowledge. I feel like the connection to that is that I see that the cost of being out of integrity is inflammation in your body and your mind. And so I see that there's actually a physiological cost to that, to my health. And so I know that in my own experience, when I am centered and in integrity with my values, and I'm actually living what I say, or at least trying to the best I can, there is a healthy sort of congruence in my own body. So you have to find something that matters to you enough. And that's why you can have disconnections in your patterns. That's just why people could start to change their diet, and all of a sudden that changes their life. They could change their relationship to their body. That changes their life. So I would say you want to start to insert choices. Sometimes you need to like microdose change, and other times people waterboard change,
Hero dose.
You were like this. I know when you did changes, all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm done with that. And because you have that uncanny ability that the moment you have an awareness, you can't exist in it because it causes you too much suffering. The other thing I'll say is that when you sell out a thing you create the doorway for addictions, because addictions feed on the fact that you don't want to be with yourself, right? Yes. Because anything that is addictive changes your state. So that means you don't want to be in the state you're in. The other thing I really thought about when I was in a medicine ceremony, actually, which is so cliche, of course. But I remember saying to the medicine, like, can you give me direction in the next steps that I should take? And it said, why would we give you direction when you don't listen to what we've already given you? Like, you're not getting more. And I was like, fuck, that's good. That's medicine right there.
Yeah.
And it made me reflect on it. I was journaling after, and I was writing that whenever you don't live a truth you know, you trade a truth you need. So whenever you don't live a truth you know, you trade a truth you need. Because you're not even saying, I trust. You're actually living in the very act of not trusting. And I think it is sort of this, to religious people, it would be like a religious declaration. I see it as, it could be that too, but it's really like you're saying, this is how much I believe. This is how much I'm willing to sacrifice or trade in order to get the thing I desire. And like, if you're leaving an unavailable relationship pattern, I mean, you're really choosing to be present with yourself, and that you'll no longer punish yourself by staying in the pattern, you know, because ultimately your self-worth is created by the choices you make. So if you make bad choices, you're not going to love yourself. And that, it's literally that simple. And that's why Jordan Peterson, love him or hate him, it's great advice that he says, make your bed. And it's not because making your bed is going to change your life. It's the act of doing something you say you're going to do that changes your life. And that's why if you're more of a microdoser of change, you can literally build those muscles, because when you say, I'm going to go for a walk, and you do it, that is transformative. Even if it's walking 15 steps, if you say you're going to make your bed and you do it, that's a massive, those small lifts say, when you do something else you say you're going to do it because you have the evidence of the smaller moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's building trust with yourself. Like, how are you expecting yourself to hold yourself through the challenge of leaving an unavailable partnership or making those big changes if there's no safe place for you to go? Like, if you can't come back to yourself without beating yourself up, without making yourself wrong, without punishing yourself, as you said, then where do you go? Like, there's no other option but to just try to find another unavailable partner in a different body that's going to like save you from that feeling of being with yourself if you are not a safe person to be with as yourself. And this is all coming back to the things that we learn about ourselves or decide about ourselves before we're even really able to make those decisions. Like, as children, if you make an attempt to connect with a parent, for instance, and they're busy or they've got something else on their mind and they kind of brush you off, there's an assumption that you make about that because they're the source of safety, they're the source of love, they're the source of provision. They're kind of on this hierarchy of like, they're needed for survival. So if they're not giving you what you need, it must be because there's something wrong with you. And so that becomes the pattern of like self-judgment. I'm too needy, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not deserving. And that's what continues to perpetuate our choices going forward. Right. Those traumas, even though it might not be like major abuse, it can be a smaller thing that kind of fractures our sense of self and our sense of safety in the world. And then that becomes the blueprint that we choose from over and over again, trying to, in some wild way, heal ourselves from it, but also trying to get the thing that we need. I loved what you said, that the truth that you ignore, you trade the truth that you, was it? Say it one more time for me.
Yeah. When you don't live a truth you know, you trade a truth you need.
You trade a truth you need. So that truth of all of us coming into the world as whole and complete, as love, as potential, as all of these powerful things, we trade that truth for something else because we don't fully believe it ourselves. We don't fully trust ourselves because we've had an experience that has created dissonance enough in our bodies that has made it really uncomfortable. And then we kind of get like used to that habit. I loved what you said about embodiment or noticing when you're out of integrity or out of alignment, it shows up as inflammation in your body. And I think this is such an important point to talk about because it's easy to say like emotions are like emotions. People are just too emotional. Like they're kind of inconvenient, but the energy and motion that is moving through us as feelings, as emotions, that energy goes somewhere. And I had that experience of like not living my truth for so many years until it was overwhelmingly obvious that there was something out of alignment, because all of a sudden I lost function of my hand and there was no explanation for it. So it can show up as like things like indigestion, things like stomach issues, or a little bit of inflammation here, or a little like ache and pain here. But if we continue to live out of integrity and we continue to kind of suppress our emotions and even like suppress those feelings because it's inconvenient to tell the truth, it's inconvenient to heal those things, they just get louder and louder and louder. Like they don't go away. The addiction gets more painful. The relationships get more painful. We end up losing something that we're trying to not lose. Do you know what I mean? Like we're kind of like
100%
pushing it off into the future until it's like we manifest the very thing that we don't want to have happen.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing that we are the people who prevent our own expansion, you know? Like,
yeah.
You realize there's a great Rumi quote where he says something along the lines of, why do you stay in the prison when the door's right there?
Yeah.
And, you know, I have a friend who was talking about leaving a relationship, unhappy in it, been unhappy for a long time, no willingness to change, etc., in the partner. And he was saying to me that we have a house together. And I was like, I get it. Like, that's stressful. We're not minimizing that. But I was like, buddy, a house isn't a prison. Like, unless you make it a prison. Like, it's so fascinating to me that we're so conditioned to bypass our experience of having the birthright of joy. Mm-hmm. Like we have parents who we could just say like, oh yeah, maybe people inherited really hard times. Okay. But your loyalty to that system of sadness is not loyalty. Like if you becoming joyous is betrayal to a system, then the system is a system of enslavement. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think unconsciously we do this so much, and it's not anyone's fault. But it's like we don't want to betray our mother or father or both of their emotions, the prison they're in. And yet we like can see this door. There's this great meditation with Ram Dass, which is from John Hopkins, and it's called Sit Around the Fire. And it's so good. And so in it, he says, essentially, we walk through the door. We don't worship the door of the temple. And, you know, that was kind of insignificant to me the first 10 times I listened to that meditation. But you know how layers of a conversation start to reveal themselves. And I just realized like worshiping the gate is not the same thing as walking through the gate. Mm-hmm. And I think we're so often addicted to our sadness or the victimization of what we can't have or what has happened to us that we think that the transformation and the change and the reclamation is somehow also a betrayal to our wounds. As it's actually an honoring of the wound. It's actually an honoring of the trauma. It's an honoring of it to use it. Because you know that saying where people are like, oh, it didn't happen to you, it happened for you. That's almost too big of a language change for people because they believe that if I go from 2 to 4, I negate the 2. Mm-hmm. But you could have trauma. You could be the victim of trauma, and many people are. And that can be in service of your evolution. Mm-hmm. Because you think of like you're born into a family that has abuse, and then you're abused by someone who was abused. And then you decide to take the experience of your abuse and use it as a way to create boundaries, self-expression, accountability. Like you're like, no longer will this exist in my being. That is actually alchemizing the experience and honoring it and honoring the lineage. Finally, that this lineage has said, like, there will no longer be a silent woman, or there will no longer be an oppressive father, or whatever it is.
Yeah, you know? Totally. I just did an interview actually with Marielle Hemingway, who is Ernest Hemingway's granddaughter, and we were talking about this idea of breaking generational curses. Like this idea of like, well, everybody's done it before, so that's just what we do. But one of the really powerful points that she brought out was that there comes a point where you have to take responsibility for your life, not for what happened to you or for how things happened, but for what you create from that. So that idea of like it happened to me versus it happened for me. What do I do with this now? Like, these are the cards I've been dealt, and how do I play this hand? And what I teach a lot of my clients is that oftentimes we avoid responsibility because it feels like a heavy burden. It's like, oh my God, I have to like, now I'm responsible for all of this stuff, and it just feels too overwhelming. But the feeling or the sense that I get from it, because truly I was like, I don't want to be responsible for all of these other things, for all of these other people. Like, I want to kind of shirk that responsibility onto others. But true responsibility, if you break down the word, is the ability to respond. How you respond in moments, not recreating the past, but creating something anew through your ability to be present, through your ability to understand, like, I am sovereign, I have power. Liberating yourself from your experience by looking at it. And most people are like, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to go there. I don't want to talk about it. I'm just going to like pretend like it didn't happen. But it's in there. It's in you. Right. It's running in the background, and it's really creating all of your steps moving forward. It's trying to wake you up to the fact that you have the power to make a different story from this. Like, you are the author. You get to write what comes next. You get to make a new life for yourself any moment that you choose from it. And oftentimes it's like, it's crazy. Like you said, like, the door is open. We have the ability to do it, but it's that knowing, doing gap of like, I know I should, but actually doing it requires us to have, like I say, that 10 seconds of courage to like walk through the door and see who you will be on the other side of that if you don't keep rehashing the same stories of the past. And I find that most people have like what I call an oh shit moment, where they're like, oh shit, like, I'm at a choice point right now. Like, I get to decide. There's something that's stirring within me that is moving me to look at things or maybe take an action that I wouldn't have in the past. So for me, I talk often about that moment in the kitchen where I had this splitting of myself, it seemed, where I was like watching myself physically in a home that I had consciously created. And another part of me, my soul, I call it, saying, not for another second. Like, I can't keep living this lie. I can't keep doing this church thing. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay in my marriage. I can't keep trying to make everybody happy with myself, like, dying inside. So I'm curious for you. You've amassed like such a wealth of knowledge going through medicine journeys, and like the way that you write about your story with Kai in your book, Liberated Love, that you guys wrote together. You've gotten all of this wisdom. You're living at this highest level of truth based on everything that you've learned for yourself. But if we go back to the beginning, like, did you have an oh shit moment where you realized, dude, like, I cannot keep doing this. There is something not right here.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. So many. I mean, I feel like I lived a life of really intact integrity till I was about 19. Then I went through a massive betrayal in a relationship. And I unconsciously, because I just wasn't, I could have talked to my father about it and my mother, but like more specifically, my dad would have been the one I talked to about relationships. He was always so good at guiding me. But I don't think, when your level of awareness surpasses a parent, which is like both a sad and exciting moment. And not to say that my father doesn't hold wisdom that I haven't accessed. I just mean in the relational realm, if I had gone to a parent and said, I've gone through this betrayal, it would have been really helpful to hear explicitly, don't you dare make this mean anything about you. But I made it mean a lot of things about me. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. She cheated on me with a guy in college, where she went away to. And she brought him back to the city we were both in. I was still in, she was from, and like as a friend first. So there was like just so much shame and embarrassment. And then there was a lack of, not because I couldn't have been supported by people I love, but I think that shame made me really hide what I was really going through. The the deep, deep grief and devastation. Again, there was no template. Like there was no one, you couldn't Google it at the time. And you just listened to like, I listened to End of the Road from Boys to Men, you know? So there was no person who was saying, hey, the reason your world feels like it's over is because the story you believed is over. It was a deep betrayal, deep trauma. And I made it mean that when I love people, they lie to me, they betray me. I made it mean that when I love people, I betray myself. Because if I really look at that external betrayal, it was really like forged months before when I agreed to relational circumstances that she was going away for school, I was staying, and we were going to be able to see other people if we wanted to, but we would tell each other about it. I had no interest in seeing other people. So, you know, the way she went about it wasn't in integrity, but I dishonored myself then, and that led to a life path of betrayal. But instead of navigating that and processing that, I just drank and partied. And I, for the first time, like a month later, tried to have a one-night stand that was unsuccessful because I couldn't get a boner. Because I was so deeply out of integrity with my own morals. I'd never done anything like that. But then
your
I
body
figured
is
out,
trying to tell you.
Right. But again, no one's talking about that. Like, hey, maybe you're going to experience performance anxiety because you don't want to be where you are. You know? And I realized there was a part of me that knew that I couldn't do, that it was likely because I was out of integrity. But I got to say, there's also another part of me that's like, what's wrong with me? That I can't get an erection now. Right. So I learned that if I drank enough, I could numb my values. And so it just turned me into like a moderate binge drinker, which was so culturally normal. And it was like normal in college and normal to just be trying to have one night stands. Like ironically, you were like more socially celebrated, you know, even though when I was like deeply monogamous and committed, you know, you're not hanging out with your buddies in the change room at sports. And they're like, oh man, tell us about the extra layer of love and depth you got to, you know. It's like, did you get a BJ last night, you know? And so I found myself stuck in this sort of paradox of social status now for achieving more sexual conquests, but then also feeling so empty. And so there was like a come to Jesus moment when I was 27, engaged, similar like you know, waking up in a relationship and being like, I don't even want to be here. And I don't even feel connected to myself. And she was amazing. That was hard because I was like, I don't even want this person who's incredible. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, and that was a lot of my quest, was to figure out what's wrong with me that I don't want to be in this engagement, rather than what's right with me that I don't want to be in. And because that was the birth of everything for me. It was the moment like, oh shit, but also, oh shit. Like I haven't been paying attention.
Yeah.
And then I just asked myself, when was the last time that I felt truly connected to myself? And it had been probably since that betrayal. So it had been about 8 years. Yeah. And I was living life, checking off the boxes. I had a good job. I was about to get the picket fence and make enough money to take care of a family. And then here I was, just like a shell of myself with everything I was taught to want and not wanting it. That was... And I just, like, for everyone listening, and I know you reinforce this too, is like, there's so much beauty in that truth. Like, that's not a wisdom to be fixed. That's a wisdom to be explored. And we're so afraid of our knowing when our knowing goes against what we're doing. And I remember Carolyn May says that we ask for a message from God, and then when we get it, we pretend we didn't hear it. I need
a signier sign. Like, that's not enough. I need something else.
I was so that. I was like, I had every technique and adaptive strategy to avoid the truth. But the thing is that the truth really always comes for you. Always.
Yeah.
So it came for me. And it came for me, either I was going to get sick and continue to be in the life I was in. And I could feel that, like, immense amount of anxiety, immense amount of, like, what's wrong with me? And then I, like, have to go deeper into the research of what's wrong with me, rather than, wait, I just don't want to be in this, and that's okay. And then we would get to the layers of why years later, you know?
Yeah. It's so powerful to acknowledge that, because so many of the women that I work with, and I'm sure the people that you work with too, they're highly successful. They've done that. They've like checked the boxes through their adaptive strategies, whatever they are. They've made a way for themselves to amass a lot of external validation that just makes the gaping hole even bigger of how disconnected they feel from themselves, because they're like, okay, when I have the car, or when I have the job, or when we get married, it'll be better. Like, I don't feel really connected now, but when we get engaged, I'm sure that's going to be the thing. As soon as I have a ring, I will be happy. And then it's like, didn't really feel like I thought it was supposed to feel like. So maybe when we get married, that'll be the thing. And then you're like, why am I not there yet? That what's wrong with me thing. I think it's so important to reaffirm that there is nothing wrong with you, and that sometimes we imagine, like, the context that I look at everything from is the spiritual lens of like, we are spiritual in nature. We are energetic beings. We are these souls that are here for expansion, expression, and experience. And I think sometimes it's easy to think in like personal development and manifestation and spirituality that it's always like light and love, and like your soul is always going to be like, yay. Sometimes
No.
it doesn't feel good. Sometimes it feels like shit. It's like I feel stuck. I feel unfulfilled. I feel all of these sort of negative emotions that are letting you know that you are filtering your life through a misguided channel that is like falsehood. And I tell my clients all the time, like, if it feels like shit, it is not your truth. If it feels like you're beating yourself up, you're telling yourself stories about your inadequacies or that there's something wrong with you, you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. So how can we flip the script and be like, what is this telling me here? If this relationship doesn't feel fulfilling, what is it telling me? Not that there's something wrong with this person, or not that there's something wrong with me, but maybe it's just not aligned. Maybe this is just something letting me know that there is a different way to move through life, or move through my relationship, or move through my career or something. So those feelings of dissatisfaction or frustration, often, like you said, we just blame ourselves, like, I'm doing something wrong. But truly, it's us, like a part of us that's trying to wake us up and saying, like, there's a misalignment that's happening here. And again, back to that idea of like, the more we repress those things, like you said, I could have stayed in that. I could have gone ahead and like completely ignored it, not walked through that door of like telling the truth of like, I don't want to be here. And you could have built even more of a life, and then down the line gotten sick, or it just, the thing is, like you said, the truth always comes for you. But when you can hear it when it's a whisper, it's so much easier to start course correcting than when it comes as like that massive 2x4. Because I've had many whispers in my past life, many whispers of like, this isn't it. There's something else. And
Right.
like, yeah, but you know what? I don't want them to be mad at me. I don't want to look like an asshole. I don't want to seem selfish or greedy or ungrateful or blah, 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 whatever, all of those things. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And then you double down on it and end up building even more that you have to dismantle. So the practice is like, can I be present enough with myself to hear it when it's a whisper, instead of like ignoring it and running full steam ahead into a misaligned experience?
And that's such a healing of the first moments, whether that was in utero or as a baby or as a toddler, as a little kid or as a teenager, where you had to ignore a whisper for survival. And, you know, it's like, you look historically, one, I think we had a deeper connection to our whispers because we were just immersed in nature, and you had to know them because intuition was survival. But, you know, within systems, we eventually learn that we have to ignore them in order to maintain the belonging, like you were talking about with religion. Like, you know, I also grew up religious, so not extremely, but enough that there was this state of like, well, I'm going to go to hell if I'm not good.
Yeah.
Like, if I touch my own ding dong, I can go to hell. Like, come on. Like, it feels good. So there's this strange paradox that we're holding where it's like the essence of our being is trying to be lived, and we learn to suppress it. That's so smart. And at some point you have to free it. And so that is actually the healing of the suppression, is the expression of it. And that just, you know, that takes immense amount of courage, because you're essentially, the nervous system is going, under no circumstances do we do that thing. And then we're like, but we're gonna. And it's like, no, Let's
That's why
not
it
do
feels
it.
like you're going to die.
Right.
That's why you're like, I'll just
Totally.
keep doing more of the thing that I've been doing. I love what you just said. The healing of the suppression is the expression, or the healing of the repression is the expression of it. It's honoring that truth. And it does feel like a death is about to occur, because it's a death of the old pattern. It's a death of the version of you that you've adapted to survive under that context. And that's what it means to break free from these patterns, or to live free. That liberation comes from walking through the door for yourself, realizing that you're the only one that can do that for you. Like I always say, that there is nothing on this earth that can contain the power of your soul except your mind, except the stories that you tell yourself and the patterns that you've entangled yourself in, so that you can survive growing up, being in a church, being in a family, or whatever it is, to be in society. So my question for you now is, with that understanding, like, what would you say to somebody who's listening who feels like they're like at a crossroads, for instance? Like, so maybe they're needing to end a relationship, or maybe they're starting over, or maybe they're just realizing that they lost themselves somewhere along the way. Like, what would you tell them about the relationship that they need to build with themselves before they can truly show up in partnership with another person, or really anything?
Well, the first thing, as we've been talking about, is that don't be ashamed of your feeling. Like, if you believe there's something wrong with you because you feel a certain way, it's like getting everything you desire and then not wanting it. And then people are like, well, just be grateful for what you have. And you're like, but I am not, so it's just being able to go into the wisdom of every experience, of every emotion. I think when someone has anxiety, they go, what's wrong with me that I have anxiety, or that I'm depressed? Here's a pill. And, don't get me wrong. Sure, there's a place, but I'm like, what is going on in your world and your environment and your experience that is actually creating anxiety in your body, which is a symptom? It's not a disease. So, first just realizing that there's nothing broken about you. And if you can orient to everything that you're experiencing from a place of curiosity, then you can actually go into the wisdom of the wound, of the emotion, of the symptom. And so that opens the doorway. So non-judgment when we're doing that. Also, I think it's really normal I think it's important to normalize shame. And what I mean by that, because I know people are like, wait, what? No. There's a thought that Brene Brown talks about, how shame is I am something wrong and guilt is I did something wrong. But there's actually a very important evolutionary experience of shame when you violate your own morality. So like the shame I experienced when I didn't want to share about my ex-girlfriend cheating on me, etc., that was actually healthy shame if I followed it. Now, granted, when it wasn't navigated by someone who could help me explore it properly, it was, what's wrong with me that I wasn't valuable enough that she found someone else who's smarter, bigger, all the different things, who's like more muscular, etc. But had I actually gone into the depths of that shame, the shame was really about not honoring myself. And so when you violate your own morality, you will experience healthy shame. And so it's not something to just let consume you, because it can, right? Like if I didn't actually, which I didn't, so it did consume me. But if we don't actually go into it, we think we're going to die. We think we're going to be swallowed up by it, but actually we'll be freed by it, which is actually the strange irony. But the way to do that is not to do it alone. That's why you need people. That's why you need guides. That's why your work exists. That's why my work exists. Because we very much think if I go into that darkness, the darkness will consume me. And in a way, it's like, yes, let it. But have a tether to the world, right? Like that's what might be referred to as the underworld or a shadow or whatever we want to call it. And yet I know, and I would imagine this is true for you, I want to hear what you think, is that every single one of the hardest moments of my life were the most transformational when I finally processed. Like when I finally processed that betrayal, that is one of the most potent pieces of my own, of capturing back my own power and my sovereignty over how I choose to live my life and see my pain. True for you?
100% true. The feeling of avoiding feelings because that fear of like being consumed is so powerful, and it makes so much sense because we can't really make sense of our feelings. Like there's just a lot moving in our bodies that we can't really contain. And so the more we try to avoid it, the more, like I said before, we create those circumstances. But most recently, I had one of the hardest things happen in my life. And exactly like you said, it was like I was so afraid that if it happened, I would lose faith in God, the universe. I would lose faith in myself. And so I was really just praying that everything went well. I was pregnant in the summer last year, and was terrified about the whole thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I have this child, what is going to happen? If I don't have this child, what is going to happen? And I got to a place where I was at a deadlock of fear, feeling like something could potentially happen. Like it was a little, there was something off. And I was so afraid of going through that experience of losing the pregnancy, because if it didn't work out, what would I do to myself? I was so afraid that I would blame myself, and I would never be like, I would ruin all of the work that I've done over the past decade of coming back into right relationship with myself, or I would no longer believe that the world, that God, that the universe is a good place. And the complete opposite was the experience that I had. Brock and I got so much closer, and at the end, like going through that, it was awful and terrible. I don't wish it on anybody. But it was such a powerful reminder of my power, of God's power, of recognizing like we're not actually in control of everything here, and that there is beauty and benevolence in even some of the hardest things that we go through, but we have to allow ourselves to be cracked open by it. And you receive on the other side of anything challenging a deeper sense of your humanity, a deeper sense of your divinity, a deeper sense of connection, of understanding that life is such a fragile, magical, and like precious thing. And we take it for granted and we avoid living it fully because we're afraid of feeling feelings. And at the end of the day, like nothing, no feeling is final. Like nothing on this planet is final until we're no longer on the planet. So if we can get brave enough to allow ourselves to experience life through us, as it moves through us, without trying to stop it, without trying to control or contort it or avoid it, we recognize how much power we actually have, and we can create like miracles in our lives from some of the worst things that happen. But most people are like, nope, I'm going to numb out. I'm going to distract myself. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to look at it. And I think that's like one of the saddest things, to not be able to truly, like I say, live free as the version of you that allows all of this to move through you, and to see that there's beauty in everything.
That's like a coming home to how it all works. A trust that the good and the bad are just necessary. And that's hard because, of course, you look at what's going on in the world and there's a lot of fuckery, so
much fuckery.
Right. So I was saying to people on my Instagram that I don't often watch the news. Like, I'll know what's going on, mostly because people will tell me, or I'll like catch up on something. But I do not watch any television news, anything like that shit. And people would say to me, well, that's such a privilege. And I'm like, okay, well, let's explore that. In order to know what's going on around the world, you have to have a phone, and you have to have an internet connection, and it has to be able to search a smartphone. That sounds more privileged than not having a phone. Also, you are not designed to know what's going on in every recess of the world. You never knew it before. You weren't privileged then. Now you're privileged because you have more information. Also, this recognition that like there's some sort of narcissism that gets fed through this form of activism that is like, my life's not that bad, so I need to know more about how everyone else is suffering so I can suffer with their suffering. And that is some way then I'm a martyr for that. But actually what resolves and heals the world is healing yourself. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be informed. Obviously, you could be informed. I'm just saying, don't use the version of you who's informed as a badge of honor, and also using it as righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
And
I know
instead,
this, so now.
right. Well, it's like, I hear that so much that it's like, well, it's not fair that I'm not going through that, so I should expose myself to that. And what people don't realize is that if you are not mindful of what you bring into your eyes, it's not just coming into your eyes. You could go, the algorithm can deliver you a meme, a funny meme, a cat video, a child who's suffering with an arm blown off, and then a off-roading video. Like, that's what the algorithm feeds you. And if you're not mindful of what you bring into your mind, it will derail you. And again, like a betrayal, like you thriving is a betrayal to your family system. You thriving is not a betrayal to humanity. It's actually essential for humanity. And we all have to recognize that if you can't put down your phone, then you're not in choice with your phone, and you're just being programmed. You end up in a trance state, and you go from 5 minutes I'm going to post to 45 minutes later you're watching shit that doesn't even matter. And look, I like being entertained. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I'm saying that if you want to be able to be committed to anything in your life, you have to be able to be bored, and you have to be able to be with the mundane. That is the difference between what they would call like fast drip dopamine versus slow drip dopamine. Like fast drip is this like constant novelty, but slow drip is like what you create that gets to join up with oxytocin and all the other beautiful hormones that come out. But it's what you create in long-term connection.
Yeah.
You know, it's what you create when you sit through suffering. And how is that any different? Sitting through what you sat through, which I'm so sorry to hear about your loss. I didn't know that. But like what you sat through with Brock that brought you closer together, which is an immense loss. And then you also, because that's a skill you've built. That's not a skill you were born with. You built that. I know you. I know you built that brick by brick. That is the same skill as putting your phone down in a line at Starbucks, because you could be bored. You can sit with your own discomfort. It's the same skill. It's that micro dosing, not even discipline, presence.
Presence.
I'm fasting right now. I think I'm like on hour 36, maybe 40.
We're doing one starting tomorrow, actually.
How long are you doing?
3 days.
Wow. I was going to hit 3 days, but I have hockey tonight, and I don't think I can play hockey on a fast. Yeah. I was thinking about it. I'm like, whoa, I don't know how I'm going to feel with doing freaking sprints. And so I'm going to break it at 48. But yeah, it's like, it's discomfort. It's a hermetic stress. It's good for my body, you know, under the right circumstances. And I think about that's like cold plunging. It's a hermetic stress. Saunas are a hermetic stress. Hard conversations are a hermetic stress. These are all so important to build the muscle to be with change and transformation and suffering and hard things. That was a long rant that started somewhere and ended here. So
no, I love it. The part that you talked about, and we'll wrap this shortly, but the idea of being derailed by all of this inundation of information, like you said, we're not meant to be constantly up to date with like the infinite things that are happening all around the world. That's not to say don't know about them, but I think when we take on that righteousness of like, I know what's going on in this part of the world, and so I'm going to like put all of my attention and focus on that, it's easy to let that distract you from what you are actually meant to do. Because what I truly believe is like, and I love this aspect of human design. It talks about the differentiation of each individual. We're all here for a different reason, a different purpose. Some of us are meant to be the healers. Some of us are meant to be the teachers. Some of us are meant to be the supporters. Some of us are meant to be the activists. But when everybody takes on the role of being an activist because they're feeling triggered by intense emotion that is put in their faces, like you said, maybe it's a cat video, and then maybe it's a war-torn experience that you're seeing like in the span of just a few seconds. When we let that derail ourselves, when we're stuck in the addiction of distraction, instead of like quote unquote being bored, which is also just being open to the moment and being responsive to that, when we allow ourselves to not be derailed constantly and not have to take up every cause that is like screaming for attention, we can actually tune into what we're truly meant to stand for. And when we're in our position of power, we're able to take effective action that will make change instead of just allowing the inundation of triggered emotion to just spew out more triggers like all over the place. If we can allow ourselves to be able to hold more energy in our bodies, to be more connected with what our true essence and purpose on this planet is, we wouldn't have so much of this chaos that's happening. I mean, it might be like a naive or like a Pollyanna type thing to believe in, but I believe like if we could all truly just come into right relationship with ourselves, to be able to own our ability to feel feelings without needing to react to them, but to respond to them, to allow them to like motivate us from a place of power, not from a place of disempowerment, not from a place of fear or frustration at something, but really allowing it to come from that place of like, I stand for this, not I'm fighting against this, we would have a very different world. And so coming back all around to this whole conversation, the relationship that we have with ourselves is the foundation of everything else. If we're willing to, like you said, be uncomfortable with the truths that are presenting themselves so that we can liberate ourselves from anything other than that, then I can imagine that the world would be a very different place if we were all able to hold ourselves without the need to outsource experiences to other people or healing from other people.
Yeah, I mean, what you're speaking to is this importance of continuing to move backwards where choice begins. You know, like, is your life a result of what you've sort of, like fate has just decided where you end up? Or are you going to work with fate? Are you going to actually, in exchange for the things you want to create, you're willing to heal the things that are holding you back? And even that responsibility, the ability to respond, you're deciding the information you're feeling, you're deciding how you're going to act on that information. Most of us are just automated till we're not. And that is both the most prolific, powerful work, because you realize that when you engage in choice, you actually have to grieve and probably rage all of the moments that you didn't engage in choice. So you have to process. That's why most people don't do it, because they're like, it's too confronting. If all of a sudden I choose my life, then now I have to process that I have been choosing my life, but playing victim the whole time. And again, not negating people's experience of victimhood. That's like, this is the exchange that always happens. That's victim blaming. No, I'm not saying that it's negated. I'm saying that at some point, though, we have to decide. There are many psychological reasons that we're addicted to our phones. There are psychological and survival-based reasons we stay in abusive relationships. None of what I'm saying is negating any of that. It's saying, though, at some point, whether it's a whisper or a cosmic dump truck, we will have to confront reality or not. You know, like I realized a long time ago that I was like in love with this idea of living purpose and happiness and meaning. And I have a lot of people in my life who are like, yeah, I love the NFL. Great. Like I love Sunday Night Football. Great. This isn't a morality thing. It's not like I'm better because I do that. We just have different ways we source meaning. And if I start to judge the way they're doing it, that's different. Some people want to wake up, some people don't. How it is watching the NFL not being awake, I don't know. Maybe it is the ultimate form of
enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe I'm the fool, right? Like both are possible. Also, the queen could have been a lizard. I don't know. Maybe the Earth's flat. I don't know. I haven't gone down any of those rabbit holes, and I'm not endorsing any of those things. Everybody relax. Or maybe I am, right? Like, I just think it's like so interesting when, like I was talking to a friend the other day who's in psychology, a psychologist, and was talking about how through education has learned how to like read people's bodies and sort of frame their archetype of like wounding, etc. Which I totally, you know, if you build enough data, you can do that. Or you learn and read about it, you could do that. Or you read behavioral books or like Chris Voss, you know, on negotiations. And I also believe that there's like a intuition form of that the more you open yourself up to the information that's available to you beyond what you see, you can feel. It's like when a mother and a baby are co-sleeping and the baby starts to come out of deep sleep. The mother starts to come out of deep sleep, all without any words or movement or anything. There's something going on a brainwave pattern that's just different. And I was saying to my friend, like, well, maybe you're just opening up more to your intuition and like connecting more to like what's going on in other dimensions. And he's like, no, it's like I'm learning this stuff. And I was like, all right, maybe. So they're just two different frameworks of how to see it. But I really do believe, you know, as we've been talking about, that if you start to enact choice, you actually are believing in the God that you hope exists. And I remember Alan Watts said that when you live the choices, when you start to make conscious choices, you become the God you were taught to praise. I think it's so fascinating if you look at the history of religion, that religion started to become the broker between you and God. As where like, what a brilliant thing. Like if you're good or bad, we'll let you talk to them. We'll let you talk to them. But how about you could just talk to them all the time? And is that the voice of soul? Is that the voice that's saying like, no, keep going? And I think you just have to expect and normalize that you're going to want to sabotage yourself. The smaller self, the shadow, the predator, whatever you want to call it, is like, stay small, you little bitch. And you're like, hell no.
You're like, no, man. Yeah, that's the human dilemma, the human and spirit, the duality of both.
Right.
And the more that we can like eke out more of like I see all of our emotions on a range, like there's the positive ones and then there's the negative ones. The more that we're able to experience the negative ones, the more we can experience the positive ones. And to the point of like tuning into your intuition, the more range you have of sensation, of feeling, the more you can pick up on the really subtle things. Like your friend who's like studying all of this stuff, like maybe it's like the knowledge that he has, but even that knowledge is feeding his intuition with more of a range of perception. So it really is about allowing yourself to experience your humanity and grieving the things that need to be grieved so that you get good at grieving, and then you can feel the rest of the world and respond from a place of knowing what that's like and wanting to do something about it instead of just not wanting to feel uncomfortable. So telling everybody they should support this cause or telling everybody else what you think they should do, taking the ability to respond and create as your own. I have loved this conversation. I feel like we could talk about so many more things and go on for hours. Maybe we'll do a part 2 sometime. But Mark, before I let you go, I'd love to hear what you're excited about right now. Like, what are you creating that's feeling expansive, or what are you just looking forward to, feeling passionate about right now?
Man, well, it's probably pretty evident, but my real, I'm just getting lit up by the exploration of our relationship to technology. It's like really coming forward for me. And I've been developing a protocol for how to unhook from social media and technology and your smartphone and reclaim your attention, And so I've been living it, practicing it to see what it does. And it's actually quite interesting that as I've done what I might call like a dopamine fast, or just adjusting how my brain works, I actually have a bit of a disgust when I relate to my phone now. Like there's like a disgust for it in a little way, which I think is healthy. It's like a healthy level of whenever anything is extracting from you and enslaving you, it is a natural response to be disgusted by it. But at the same time, if it is also the place where you make money and grow a business, right? These are the polarities that we have to hold. Yeah. Then how do you, so it just means that we're not fully healed in relationship to it. So that I spend one day now screen free. I don't check my phone for the first 30 minutes that I wake up. I got this thing. It's, I'll show it to you. It's called a light phone.
Cool. What is this?
And it just does.
It's literally for just phone.
Yeah.
Alarm, album, calculator, calendar.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Calculator, calendar, camera, directions, music, notes, and settings. That's it. And so every Sunday, or if that's the day, Saturday or Sunday, I put my iPhone on driving mode and it has a little auto reply and it says, if you need me, you can call me or text me at this number. And then I just spend the whole day immersed. It's actually kind of funny because like you realize how much you use your phone for, which is obviously good, right? for finding things, etc., or Amazon. And I find myself asking people, hey, do you know where this is? Do you know? Or I'll like ask Kai to use her phone. Then I'm not suffering from it.
You're like,
hey, can you do this thing? Because I can't.
Because I can't.
But it's been really powerful because I notice just my brain is working a lot different, a lot better. And
gosh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many layers to it. Digital dementia, the impact of blue light on production of hormones. I also think because notifications increase cortisol, you have a higher state of inflammation if you're using your phone more. There's so much to it. But so I'm really passionate about it because I noticed it within myself, which is how I started in relational teaching. But I noticed it within myself. And then I didn't even know I was on the journey of doing it till I was on it. And then I'm like, wait, this is really interesting
here.
Yeah.
This is so cool. So the protocol that you're developing, is that something that you're going to be making available, or is this like for your personal use?
Yeah. I'll just give it away. And then my retreats are all no phones, full detoxes. I love that. I kind of was thinking about how do you describe the retreats? Well, one, they're I call them the unknown because there's no schedule, and that triggers enough people for personal growth. So there is like a plan. You just have to be somewhere and then just like let life happen. You'll get fed, you get journey. Yeah, fun time. And the second part is that I just think of it as like you're raw dogging presence. You know, you're like having a really... So I did it in Moab where you weren't allowed your phone. You left it at the office actually. And then we were on a raft for 5 days and sleeping under the stars and having, nights around the fire. It was honestly so beautiful. And I didn't know this would happen, but what was a interesting side effect of not having your phone versus having it on airplane mode was a completely different world because it's not even available for you. So one, you don't have the visual cue, but you don't have the unconscious cue. And there's research to show that when your phone is face down on a table while you're on a date, you're less vulnerable because you're thinking about your phone. You're thinking about that world. So, through this, I've become very passionate about it because I think generally the last thing we touch at night is our phone and not our partner. And I think that has a potentially quite detrimental effect.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. When is your next retreat? Do you have any planned, or are you...
I think I'm going to run a men's retreat in January. Yeah, with a couple other guys, which I'm really excited about. So I just haven't launched that yet. Just kind of figuring that out. And then the other retreat, I'll do another unknown retreat in probably February-ish. That's what I'm thinking. February, March. And that'll be, oh my God, I'm so excited. It'll be an adventure.
Oh my God. It sounds amazing. I want to go on that one.
They're so fun because we couple novelty and adventure and collaboration and you get to witness yourself doing hard things. Like I've never been whitewater rafting and I've camped a lot, but I never camped on a cot on the beaches of a river sleeping under the stars. Like that's
incredible.
It was pretty awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Amazing stuff. As always, you're up to really amazing stuff. So how can people connect with you? Where do they go to find more of you and connect?
Yeah, you can find me at markgroves.com on Instagram. You can find me at Create the Love for more relational stuff. And it's Mark Groves for more personal, emotional feelings about politics and the world.
Real talk.
Yeah. Both are real talk, but one is more focused on relationship. Yeah.
Totally. And of course, the Mark Groves podcast.
Yeah, which you've been on.
Yes.
Great.
Loved it. Amazing. Mark, you're awesome. I always love our conversations. Thank you so much for joining us on the Live Free Lifestyle podcast. And to those who are listening and watching, thank you so much for being here. If this is a conversation that has impacted you or you feel like there's somebody who really needs to hear it, please share the love. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.